I thought I'd never say this, but do you want to give Skype a try?
I wonder if this is a Hangouts problem.
Yeah, I've got a 3 or 4 second delay here as well. It's like watching a badly dubbed film. Your lips move about a few seconds after the sound comes out.
Yeah, come on, let's try Skype. We'll try Skype.
All right, desperation.
I'll disconnect from this.
Oh, no. Skype cannot be used for emergency calls. Hello, hello. We have sound. We have source of synchronization.
Friendly Skype tune. How's that?
And an image of a kind.
Yeah, you're kind of in sync. It's probably down to about a 1 second delay instead of
20 seconds.
20 second delay. Much
Much better picture, actually, on Skype, I've got to say. Yeah, can we go back to Hangouts?
Right, on that note. Oh, no, my picture's disappeared now.
Oh, man.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
I've got 2 copies of you at the minute. Hold on.
Oh, that's probably the problem.
The hell?
I've got to say, it is an absolutely fantastic picture compared to what we got on Hangouts.
I think I'm pressing buttons that I don't know what the buttons do.
Should we just have a phone call and maybe record that?
What, and not see your lovely face?
We may have to at this rate.
Well, my little in-picture box of me is completely vanished now. Can you see me?
I've got a picture of you, but it's static.
Oh, okay, that's weird. We'll just leave it and hopefully it'll sort itself out.
Yeah, come, let's just run with it.
Have we done let's do an intro. Welcome back to the Measuring Up podcast, the UK's first and possibly favourite commercial joinery podcast. I'm Andy MacLellan and I run a little cabinet making business up in Newcastle upon Tyne, and when I'm not doing that, I run the Gosforth Handyman YouTube channel.
And I'm Peter Millard. As well as running a virtual 10-minute workshop for YouTube, I also run a small and far from perfectly formed carpentry and cabinet making workshop in the garden spot of West London. Every couple of weeks we get together in our internet cafe and talk about the topics of the day, whatever takes our fancy, or whatever's been suggested by you, our fantastic listeners. But before we get into any of that, Andy Mac, welcome back. It's been quite a couple of weeks, hasn't it? One way and another.
It has. It's been quite a morning of just trying to get Skype and connections to work and the joys of technology.
We started this at 9 o'clock. It's now 9:20. With a bit of luck, we'll be finished by lunchtime.
We need to knock 20 minutes off our however long we think the show is.
Last show of the season. It's got to be a long one.
Yeah, last show. We'll try not to drive people too insane with the length of the show, but
it takes as long as it takes sometimes.
Exactly. We've got a lot to get through from 30 episodes of stuff that we've missed out.
Well, it'll keep till the season. Are we doing a season 4? I'm not so sure. Do you think we should?
We'll maybe put it out to our Patreons and see.
Yeah, maybe see if they give the Patreons a vote and see if they give us a yay or a nay. Talking of voting, have you been watching the televised debate? I know we don't touch on politics really, but have you been watching the televised debate on television about the MP selection for the next Prime Minister? No, neither have I, actually. No.
Fascinating television.
MPs always want to get on television, but as soon as they do, everybody wants to switch off or change channels. It's just bizarre. We had a little conversation about this on Twitter, and I just don't understand why this is being televised, because the public doesn't have a vote. There's a limit to how much the public cares about this. Give us a vote and we'll watch and form an opinion, but, if it's decided by the MPs, what's it got to do with us? To be blunt,
the most bizarre process I've ever known. I've never known so many elections to whittle a list down from 11. And the crazy thing is that 2.5 years ago, when May got in, I know we're not talking about politics, but there was no one wanted to be PM. And now, 11 people or however many want to be PM. And they've had, 5 separate elections to narrow it down to 2 people. And now there's going to be another election to narrow that down to whoever. And I've completely lost interest. I didn't have any interest in the first place, to be honest. But
just let them cage fight it out.
I think that would be a fantastic solution.
Yeah, bare knuckle.
Or put them in a workshop and see who makes the best thing.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, next PM should definitely be somebody who can scribe an internal corner. If they try to mitre it, I'm sorry, they're out.
I would be impressed if they could hammer 2 pieces of wood together. Maybe we could just have something where we assess the basic life skills, whether or not they can make a little birdhouse or something like that.
Yeah, make your own 2 short planks joke there, guys.
Yes, well, yeah, exactly. Do they have basic survival skills? Maybe drop them independently on different kind of isolated islands
from a great height.
and just see who survives.
And hopefully it'll take so long, we'll find somebody else some other way. We'll just all get on with it, shall we?
I think they'd be gone within a couple of days, to be honest. I don't think they'd survive that long out in the open without their entourage.
Well, I think Boris Johnson, we're not getting into it, but the chubby bloke with blonde hairs has got a bit of meat on him. He'd probably last longer, wouldn't he?
He might do. He has lost a bit of weight, hasn't he? Did he? I can't remember. I'm sure I saw something where he lost a bit, but...
It's all that cycling.
Yeah, could be. So, how are you? What have you been up to?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, been an entertaining and busy couple of weeks in many ways. I'm still painting flipping tables. They're taking a long time to do. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit more later on.
One thing I completely forgot to mention on the last show, and I briefly mentioned it afterwards, I don't think we were recording then though, but it was congratulations on a couple of your videos that are doing really well, but especially the tracksaw one. So
tracksaw one, yeah, the Parkside tracksaw one.
Good work.
Thank you. Yeah, that had come out. It's a weird thing, and you know this more than I do, about having a video that goes proper viral. I've had fairly popular videos, and I guess for a channel of our kind of size, anything that gets kind of 40,000, 50,000 views is counts as viral for us. But this was the first one that I've had that went straight over 100,000. So we've got videos that have done more views than that over time. But this one was the first one where I think when we spoke, we were recording this on June 21st, on the Friday. We did the last one on the 7th. And my video came out on the Tuesday before that, and it was doing pretty well. It had over 20,000 views by then. But what often happens is it does quite well, and then they tail off. And when the next video comes out on the Friday, then that sort of takes over. But the Parkside plunger saw kept going. We're at 120. I've stopped looking, to be honest, but 128,000, 129,000 views, something like that at the moment. So, it's been a barnstorming video. And the weird thing about having a very popular video like that, of course, is it kind of resets your expectations. You mentioned the video that I had out on the Friday when we recorded before was the Lamello video, and that's done really well. That's at about 28,000 views. And normally I'd be absolutely stoked about that. But of course, you look at that in comparison to the Parkside one, you think, well, add 100,000 of that and I'll be interested, kind of thing. It's bizarre.
It's very bizarre. I've got a theory about this, and I'm going to save it for the after show. But I've got a theory all about this, and it's a little bit tinfoil hat, which is why I'll keep it just for the after show, so that people don't lock me up immediately.
Yeah,
or lower the chances of being put into an institution. But
it's a very nice straitjacket you're wearing there, by the way.
Well, I have to wear that these days, And
I particularly like the show notes in crayon because they didn't give you anything sharp. But yeah,
they're always in crayon. I'm lucky if I've even got them printed out on the day. But yeah, fantastic work. Now, here's a question. Are you happy that it's that video that's gone viral?
Of course not. I've done much better videos on that saw since then. That was one, like always with these things, I thought, oh, crikey, I got an email about the saw coming out. It was available on the Thursday. I thought, crikey, I've got one of those saws. I must do a video about that. I'll get it out, try and get it out on the Tuesday. I thought I might do it on the Friday, but then it's been out for a day. And I kind of threw it together over the weekend to come out on the Tuesday. And it was literally just cobbled together quickly because I knew I needed to do it. And as somebody charmingly mentioned in the comments, ridiculously long preamble, over 11 minutes, and you only used the saw for 30 seconds. Thank you very much. Yeah, and thanks for viewing and commenting. I've almost missed the comments. Yeah, we'll talk more about that in the after show, because of course you suddenly get a video that goes, it gets popular, and it opens your channel up to an awful lot of people who haven't seen the channel before, which is fantastic. Always nice to look at analytics and see that graph going up and to the right with watch time, views, and income. Let's be blunt. But yes, with that comes a whole host of other stuff, which we'll discuss in due course. But thank you. Yeah, no, of course, I have far better video, much more crafted, finer work than that one.
I don't think I've ever had a video go viral that I was happy that it was that video that went viral. Do you know what I mean? It's like, why that one? Why that? You know, and then you've got, as you say, other ones that you've lovingly crafted over several days, and they just absolutely bomb. And it's like, why can't it be one of the really good videos that go viral? And it's almost to the point now where I feel sometimes like I'm jinxing it just by by putting too much effort into the video. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it's always the videos that I just knock together really quickly, like the filling that hole in plasterboard one that's still
chugging along,
beavering away, and that's and like it was just something that randomly put together for no reason.
Yeah, it's something that you were doing anyway. I'll turn this into a video, and there you go. You added a bit of humour to it, and it catches the imagination. But the weird thing is, and I want to do a video about this, and maybe you can have a little cameo on that for me, because I want to talk about viral videos and the impact that they have, but the randomness of them as well, because this is a theme that I know has come up with other people too, that the viral videos, the ones that capture the imagination, or indeed the algorithm, are never the ones that you really put the effort into. They're never the ones that you think are going to do well.
Well, we'll come back to that in the after show. As I say, I've got a theory, and it explains everything, kind of. Well, it explains some things. I would be intrigued on your views on it.
Yeah, sure.
But we'll chat about it later on. What else has been happening?
Have you got a budget for the show?
A what? A budget?
We'll come back to that in a bit as well. What else has been happening? Well, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. I have indeed been beavering away on these little tables, and I am. Again, there's a video out on that today, so you would, anybody watching the channel will have seen that by now. But these have been a bit of a challenge. I've had an episode of humility in appreciation of the work that other people do, because I do these MDF tables, and I've always said, I think I might say it on the podcast as well, that I know that when you get a good butt joint in MDF, I can get that edge almost polished, so you'll never see that join. And I've made loads of these tables. They go off to the sprayers, and I've seen them in real life afterwards. Not many of them. I've seen a few, and they look fantastic. But I've never actually sprayed one before.
Ah, right.
And these tables were the first ones that I've actually sprayed, and they've been a nightmare. That process, that technique shows up every little flaw in the joinery. It was absolutely horrible, and it's taken me a long time to get into the spraying just. I mean, it is very different to just spraying a flat panel like a door or a cabinet carcass side or whatever else, to spraying a little table where you've got 4 sides to the leg and a top and a bottom to the shelf and all the rest of it. And it's a lesson learned. I will definitely be reconsidering the way that I'm constructing them. That's been a challenge, and because of the way that I'm working, of course, this has been tying the workshop up all week as well. Not that I've got the feet yet, incidentally. I'm sure I asked for the feet over a week ago, and they still haven't arrived yet, so I've got to sort those out. But I'm finally getting there.
So what sort of problems have you had? Is it the seam showing up, or?
Yeah, the seam's showing, and if you put the paint on even slightly too heavily, it sort of sags and doesn't run, but you get a slight lip, and you've got to just mat that back and start again over and over and over. I'm getting a cracking finish. It looks fabulous, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And I didn't think for a second that I was doing the sprayer's job for them in prepping these tables to the extent that I did. But I thought they wouldn't have to do much. They could almost just whack it in the spray booth, do their thing, get a coat of spray on it, and away they go. But there's a lot more work involved than I appreciated.
Have you asked them whether they've run into any problems when they've been spraying them?
I haven't, no. To be honest, I've no contact with them at all because it's all handled by the interior designers.
Right.
In fact, I think they're using somebody else now who I don't know them at all. So yeah, I ironically and interestingly, I had the problems with the linseed oil paint before on the other ones. I'm doing some wardrobes in the same house, and purely by chance, I happened to see them because the linseed oil paint that's been refinished.
Yeah.
And they looked fantastic. You would never know that they'd been painted with this slow drying, sticky, gloopy, messy stuff beforehand. They looked just like they always do. So yeah, I would love to have a chat with them. If it looks like I'm still on speaking terms with the interior designers, I'll try and find out who they use. But yeah, a real eye opener and total respect to all the spray shops because they absolutely earn their money when they do that work. The quality of finish they get is pretty amazing. Mighty impressive.
I guess they'll be used to it because
yeah, absolutely. That's their job.
There can't be many people providing furniture like at a higher quality than what you're already finishing it. There's a limit to how much you can push a finish before handing it over.
I think my limit was reached last week, Peter. I'm still progressing, still at it.
Interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. And of course, the other thing that happened over the last couple of weeks is something that you were involved in initially. I went to do what they call a read or a talk break or a screen test or whatever you'd call it for a radio show. I'm not sure how they got hold of you, but somebody contacted you to see if you'd be interested. Is that right?
Via Twitter. It was just a random thing via Twitter, yeah. I don't know how they found out about me or whether they follow me on YouTube or whether it was literally a random thing where they just came across me on Twitter. I'm not sure.
Anyway, they contacted you to see if you'd be interested in presenting a hour-long show on carpentry. This is a radio station, a small station that broadcasts specifically to the building trades. We won't name them for a few reasons, because they can buy advertising space, frankly. But anyway, they contacted you when they realised that Gosforth Handyman wasn't just a witty moniker that you really were up in Newcastle. That idea sort of fizzled out fairly swiftly.
Yes, commuting to London once a week probably wouldn't be practical for me. So
probably wouldn't be practical, yeah. And you very kindly suggested that they tried me and a few other people, I think, as well.
Yeah, I suggested yourself and Robin Clevitt from Skill Builder and said, perhaps try you guys and see if you are interested. And
so anyway, we had a bit of chat back and forth. I shot him an email and gave him the podcast details and my YouTube channel, and he said, we just need to get you in. So I thought he meant just go in for a chat, and then wanted me in on the last Monday, a week ago Monday, and on the Friday he said, "Yeah, come in. We'll just record some talk breaks, like it's a pilot. You need 6 of those, no more than 4 minutes long." It's like, oh, okay, I've got to talk for 4 minutes on something 6 times over. Okay. So anyway, I went in, I did a little bit of video on this for my Patreon supporters, and I think I sent you the link as well. And maybe we'll pop it in our Patreon as well, because it was an interesting little episode. But I went in and I did this thing, and it was fascinating. Again, a real eye opener as to how these things are produced in a recording studio, not much bigger than the size of my table here, probably about the size of your desk. And it's, the guy that I chatted with was handling the actual start and stop recording, but no editing, just a straight read. And they would create a show out of those, Well, it was 5 talk breaks and a menu list. So coming up next on Carpentry Corner, we've got crazy customer phone calls and all that sort of thing.
Wow.
And they put that together. I still haven't heard it. They put that together, and he called me. He was very complimentary, which obviously, if you I'm not so naive that I don't see where people are shining you on a little bit and being complimentary just in order to get you to do something. But anyway, they seemed happy enough. He's been doing radio for donkey's years. Used to be on Radio Merseyside, and he's been out in Australia and New Zealand and whatever. Anyway. And I did this thing, and then it was on the Monday. On the Thursday of that week, I got a phone call. Yeah, it's looking really great. We're absolutely might start soon. A couple of slight changes. It's got to be a live show. The big boss has decided. So you've got to be in the studio for an hour a week. So I said, well, no, I'm sorry, that's just not going to work. Because, we've got stuff going on. We've got a lot of travelling planned this year. And it's a non-starter, I'm afraid. Well, maybe we could do, what if we could do half of them recorded and half of them live? Over the course of the 52-week contract, how many do you think you'd be able to do? I said, well, blimey, signing your life away for a year, maybe you could do half. I said, well, maybe, but we're trying to look a year ahead here. And I know for the next 6 months, me and my wife have got a lot of travel planned for a few reasons, which I may mention in the after show. And, let's say half and see how we get on. I said, okay, but, we haven't even had the conversation about finances yet. And he'd mentioned in, whilst we were in the little recording studio doing these talk breaks, we had a quick walk around the studios, and there's, 3 or 4 little recording studios there. It's a nice little setup. And he said you get paid when the show airs, so you don't get paid when it's recorded. And if you record it and it never airs, then you don't get paid. Yeah. Okay. So suddenly the idea of doing a live show, sounds like a better option.
Yeah, at least you might get paid.
Because you're going to get paid every time. Yeah. And then he said, I said, yeah, okay, well, he said, you need to have the conversation about finances with the big boss. Okay, fine. So, a week later, it was, we're at the stage where I might be able to do half of the shows recorded and half of the shows live. But I said, we still haven't had the conversation about money or anything yet, and that might, I can tell you what the budget is. I won't say it here, maybe because it's, as far as I know, it's still an ongoing process, and they are talking with other people.
Yeah.
Because they're doing a show, they're doing an hour-long show about carpentry, one about all the trades, basically. So there's a landscape gardener, there's an electrician, there's a plumber, there's a plasterer, there's a gas fitter,
well, maybe save that for the after show as well.
Maybe save that for the after show as well. But anyway, he mentioned a sum of money which was almost offensive.
You told me.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. I think I was polite, but I was definitely laughing when I said, no, no way would I do it for that.
When you mentioned it, I mean, and this is a show broadcast from London, and I assumed it would be kind of
London and Manchester,
slightly London-weighted rates and all that sort of thing. If it was broadcast from my next door neighbour's house, I wouldn't do it for that rate. I thought it was quite bizarre. Is that normal? I don't know.
So anyway, well, they said, "Oh, that was a fast no." I said, "Yeah, there's nothing to think about, frankly." What do you think? What were you expecting? And I said,
10 times that.
That would have been nice. I said, a few £100, because part of this, of course, part of getting people like us involved, is to glom off the back of our social media and YouTube audience as well. And, there's a bit of quid pro quo in there. We understand that. But, I know the value of my time. I know if I was a seasoned old hand doing radio, I could turn up and talk for 4 minutes at a time about this and that or whatever else. But I can't. That's not what I do. Those 6 talk breaks that I did, I had to write those. I spent most of Sunday night writing those. Anyway, the sum of money was ridiculous. So I said, no, that's not for me. Thank you. Oh, well, what do you think? What do you think would take to get you interested? I said, a few £100. Or you might start talking. Oh, okay. Well, we've got to talk about. I need to talk. I'll see what we can do and whatever. Anyway, never heard another peep out of him. So I thought that was that. Hilariously, we're doing this on Friday. On Wednesday, late Wednesday, I had a phone call from him to say, oh yeah, it's all ready to go. Haven't quite got the budget sorted yet. Few budgetary concerns that we need to iron out, but we might be good to go as early as July the 1st. So I'm not going to. I'm in the middle of other stuff, and I'm not taking a phone call. So I just shot him a quick email back to say, look, sorry, perhaps I wasn't clear. I'm really not interested in this. It's not something I can do for an hour a week as a live show. It's even doing even if we could do half of them recorded, it's just something I'm not really interested in at the moment. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
They must be talking to other people. They can't be literally putting all their eggs in one basket with you, surely.
I can't believe that I am so good at this that I'm their only option. I am their great white hope. For this radio show, this radio program. No, I can't believe that either. Anyway, a few minutes later, my phone starts lighting up with messages and texts from him and everything else. Oh, yeah, call me as soon as you can. Whatever. I'm in the middle of something. I'm not going to have that conversation now. So I rang him back yesterday morning, and thankfully didn't get him. I just got a voicemail, so I left him a message and said, look, appreciate the opportunity, but it's really not for me. I shot you an email quickly yesterday because I'm in the middle of something and I really can't have the conversation. But you do need to be looking at other presenters. I don't want to leave them hanging, obviously.
Yeah.
But like yourself, I can't believe they're only talking to me. Or maybe they've had that conversation about money with all the other hopefuls, and they've all told them the same thing. Anyway, it was a very interesting episode, fascinating to have a look inside the tent, and definitely not for me at those sort of rates. Not for me at any rate. I don't think I'm not sure I could do it. I'm sure I could cobble something together, and I'm sure I would get better at it. But it's just not something I want to do right now.
The thought of doing a live show, or the thought,
terrifying.
The mere thought of me not editing it would fill me with fear. I couldn't do that.
He said to me, look, you've got the whole length of the record to think about what it is you're going to say next. I said, yeah, great. 3 minutes.
Whole length of the record. I'd need the whole length of the record to think about what I was going to say, plus then about an hour to script it. And then I would have to say it, and then
you'd have to say it 10 times because you're still stumbling over the words, even though you've got it written down. Yeah.
And then a good couple of hours afterwards to literally edit it down to the millisecond of my OCD levels to get everything the way that I wanted it.
Yeah, that's not how radio is done.
The thought of handing that over to someone else and giving them control over my voice. Oh,
yeah. Yes, indeed. So a fascinating episode, interesting to see inside the tent. And again, an entire radio station takes up one bank of desks, basically. Maybe 12 workstation positions, sales at one end, production at the other, and the big boss man in an office smaller than the room I'm in now.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Fascinating. I don't know. I asked, and we never got the answer about what their listenership is. I don't know how many people they actually get tuning in.
Well, I would have said that's a fairly key thing to tell your presenters before booking you on a show.
I would imagine so. How many people am I going to be talking to? And it was a reasonably prime. It was, I think, they said it was between 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 on a Friday. So, drive time kind of show.
Well, if anyone else ends up on the show, do give us feedback about how it goes. It would be fascinating.
Yeah, we do. We're not going to name.
Clearly not for us, but we're not saying it's not for anyone. But it would be lovely to hear about if you do end up on it and it works out.
It is a fantastic opportunity for somebody, but I'm not sure who that somebody will be. And as I said, not for me, obviously not for you. For a youngster who wants to get into radio, I think it would be a brilliant opportunity.
Yeah.
But with the proviso that you go in with your eyes wide open in terms of contracts and what you're signing away and what you're giving away. I presume that they would want ownership of the content you're creating and broadcasting live.
Yeah, and I would assume. Very interesting.
Yeah, so fascinating. Yeah, how about you? What have you been up to?
Oh, I don't know. I've been doing nothing. Just editing. I
tell you what I've been doing. I've been searching for a copy of SketchUp 8.
All right.
Just impossible to get.
Get on my Patreon. There's a link there.
Was that?
I'll get on your Patreon and you can get on mine.
All right.
I've got a whole article all about it on my Patreon about how to get hold of SketchUp 8 free for commercial use. So
yeah, okay, because if you do a Google search, first of all, SketchUp 8 is off the map in terms of Google searches and things. If you do a Google search, you end up all kinds of scummy sites who want you to download all kinds of
oh no, don't do that.
Download nonsense before getting the thing that you're interested in.
No, this is a direct link from Trimble themselves.
Okay, because if you go to Trimble and look for old editions, it's off the it's off the chart.
Get on my Patreon and you'll find it.
So yeah,
SketchUp. Well, SketchUp's a whole different thing. I seem to be now making SketchUp videos, but that's talking about videos that you put a lot of effort into that then get 0 views. My alcove units video, which was basically, I went into the whole design. I think it was called Getting the Design Right or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, great video.
Thank you.
For anybody who's interested in how to go about the process of putting a set of alcove units together, it's an absolute step-by-step guide.
And then, so on my public video, I go into the whole design process from beginning to end and take everyone through the SketchUp design and basically everything from having your pen and paper measurement through to the final product. And then over on my Patreon, I did another separate thing where I talked people through the actual build. And I didn't want to do that. It's all just using still pictures because I didn't have time to take any videos. So
yeah, sure.
I just talked over the stills. And I didn't want to put that on the main channel because I knew it would get hardly any views, but I knew there were people on Patreon who wanted to kind of know more about that, so I ended up just shoving it on there. But when I put it out on the design video took a full 2 days to edit. It's the longest single edit I've ever done. There was so many parts to it. It was kind of like 3 or 4 videos glued together into one big video, basically.
Yeah.
And I was debating making it a multi-parter, but it was like, well, part 2 wouldn't make sense in isolation. It needed to be all part of one single video, really. And yeah, 2 full days it took just to do the edit, never mind all the filming and everything else.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of the worst performing videos on my channel of late. And it's just like, oh, why can't it be that video?
Yeah, what do you mean worst performing? You're getting at least 2 views for every minute you spend editing.
Yeah. I haven't checked how much it's made. I don't even want to know.
I know, it's desperate, isn't it? Dear.
But as I say, in the meantime, videos that I literally just knocked together in a couple of hours are just beavering away, just keeping the channel going, basically, so yeah. But we'll come back to that. Can we quickly cover off a couple of topics that we didn't cover off in episode 1?
I suppose so. I added some topics in because I thought we were getting a bit short.
Getting a bit short.
What page is it on?
Through our list of 25 topics to get through. Okay, losing and misplacing stuff.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah, I've lost my favourite masonry bit, and
Masonry bits, they are the bane of my life because they all look the flipping same, don't they?
Well, I had quite a good one, and then I have a bunch of ones that do all look the same, but then they're not as good as the good one that I bought, and my good one's vanished, and I thought it was in my toolbox, and I've turned my toolbox upside down, and it's not there. And random things that it's such a little thing, and I could buy another one, but I've got loads of masonry bits. It's just This one was a really good one. I don't want to buy yet another masonry bit for my collection of masonry bits.
Yeah, I really like the Bosch multi-purpose ones, not as multi-purpose drill bits, but as a masonry bit, because they're really, really good and really nice. You can get a long one and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I've got a few of them, but the ones I can only ever find are the 4mm ones or the 8mm ones, not the 5 and the 6. And just, I know I've got a bunch of them somewhere, but I don't know where exactly. Maddening. And tape measures as well. I got my favourite blue, old school Talmeter pre-Halterforce tape measure, and it just disappears sometimes. I just don't know where it is, and it turns up in some random pocket, or it's under a tack cloth or whatever. Maddening, absolutely maddening. Because I like to use that one tape measure for everything, because that's the one true tape measure.
I had an embarrassing one the other day, tape measure related, because as you know, I sell tape measures and I collect tape measures, and you would not believe how many tape measures I own at the minute. I must have.
I suspect I would actually.
I've got. Just my collection of tape measures on their own. They're all kind of antique ones and stuff, but I do like my tape measures.
I think vintage.
Yes, and which is a video I'll be making at some point, because at some point, tape measures switched from being left-handed to right-handed, and I'm trying to pinpoint down the year when that happened. It's around the 1980s, but 1970s, 1980s, when tape measures
really
flipped.
As late as that.
It seems to be,
or as recent as that.
From the design of the ones I've got. You just see suddenly the flip over and the reverse. So they used to read right to left and right to left, and now they read left to right. Which is more logical, because we obviously read left to right, but it's more impractical.
Yeah. And most people are right-handed. So.
Yeah, but if you're right-handed, you're going to be holding a pencil with your right hand and the tape measure with your left hand. So it makes sense for the tape measure to read right to left.
I never do that.
How do you mark?
I use the tape measure in my right hand, put it down, and then write something.
Yeah, okay, but that's kind of my point, is that in order to write something, so you do it with your right hand, but you have to do that, because otherwise the tape measure would be upside down. So you pull the tape measure out with your right hand, because you're right-handed, and then you hold it with your left hand, pick up your pencil with your right hand, and make a mark, yeah?
What you need... And I've seen these, some joker sells them, those vice versa tape measures where you got a marking on each side of the blade.
Double-sided metric-only tape measures. They solve all problems.
If only you could buy them.
If only you could.
From a popular,
Getting back to my story, so...
sorry, yeah. We're still on that.
We're still on that.
It's got to be a long show.
So I've got tape measures stashed, everywhere. I've got, ones in my truck, ones in my toolbox... several in my toolbox, depending on whether I'm imperial or metric. I've got them distributed around my workshop. I've got them in the house, everywhere. And I went out to a job to measure up, ironically. Turned up there, no tape measure. And it was like, oh my... Of all,
did you have to borrow the homeowner's sewing tape measure?
I had to borrow the homeowner's tape measure. Because the tape measure that I'd just kind of run out the house, and it's like, I've got one in the truck, it'll be fine. And I forgot, I'd taken the one out the truck to do a job or something, put it down somewhere, hadn't put it back in the truck, thought I had, went off to this job to measure up, no blinking tape measure. And I just thought, I can't tell this person that I do actually sell tape measures. It's literally, of all the things not to have with me, it was the most ridiculous thing anyway. So that was my tape measure story. What other stuff have we got for the list? So that's losing and misplacing stuff.
Most or least favourite part of woodworking?
Have we covered that? I can't remember. Definitely the dust is my least favourite.
I can't remember.
And most favourite?
Yeah, I don't actually mind. I know a lot of people say sanding, they hate sanding. I'm not fairly cool about sanding. You just kind of zone it out. It's very zen. You just got to be at one with the workpiece and the sander, and all is well.
Yeah, I'm not a particular fan of sanding, but more because of the dust. I think it's just, you can't do it without just getting covered from head to toe in dust. And effective dust collection and dust control, and we'll come back to that with a listener query as well. But yeah, effective dust collection goes a long way towards reducing that. Yeah.
But yes, it's not my favourite part, but I don't hate it. The favourite part of woodworking for me is probably getting paid. Actually,
getting paid is awesome.
Getting paid is great. But in terms of favourite part, I think it's probably finishing a project, seeing it completed.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's something that I just don't do because of the sort of work that we do, or the sort of work that I do. Certainly, a lot of what I do goes off to be painted and sprayed by somebody else, and then it's delivered to clients, and I very rarely get to see the finished piece. And it is nice to happen upon, for example, those little bedside tables. To see those finished was good. The feet looked good. The finish was lovely. And they put the drawers back in nicely as well. So, yeah, all good.
They looked fantastic as well from the pictures that I saw on Twitter. And was it on Twitter, on Instagram?
Yeah.
I can't remember of the legs.
Instagram, I think. They were working out really well. So they were good.
I think my favourite part, I was going to say finishing, definitely. I think my favourite part, and this isn't just woodworking, but it's making stuff in general, I think it's knowing that in the event of an apocalypse, you could pretty much make anything. You'd need power probably, but even without power, you could probably cobble together anything. Once you've got that kind of maker mindset,
yes, and
even just a basic set of tools, having that kind of knowledge that you can make almost anything. I can't weld, and I'd love to learn to weld one day.
Yeah, me too. I'd love to have a crack. That's a topic as well. Metalwork is on the list.
And I have a very metalwork unfriendly workshop.
Me too.
I would need a separate space for it, but I think it's nice having that
lots of
feeling.
Concrete block.
Yeah,
so the sparks don't go away.
Something not quite as flammable,
igniting all the piles of dust that are lying everywhere.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I think there's something quite comforting about knowing that worst case scenario, you can make pretty much anything, and anything day to day, other than crazy engineering projects and stuff like that. But we were joking last time about whether or not you could build your own house and stuff. And, you could probably have a stab at it.
Yeah.
I think it's just being in that maker mindset of having the comfort to have a go at it, and having a basic set of tools that allows you to just get on with it. And
I think it's something I mentioned in I don't know if it was on the podcast or in a video, but in particular, where especially amongst younger people, they seem to lack the willingness, the preparedness to have a go at something. Because if they can't find a YouTube video about it, or a Instagram post or a Facebook page, it's like it's beyond their general experience. So actually, just to have a go at nailing something together, a couple of bits of wood and a hammer, make something. Don't worry about what it looks like. Just make something. Just have a go at it.
And there is no more satisfying feeling than when you have put it together and you've made it yourself, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. You've made it, and it's yours, and it's fulfilled some sort of need for a product that you've made, whether it's solving a problem or just because it looks nice. But you've made it, it's yours, and nothing beats that satisfaction of just making something. And
some of this comes back as well to, we've talked briefly about who trains the trainers, who trains the apprentices, who are the people who are teaching them these days. And a lot of this comes back to the fact that a lot of people aren't doing this kind of stuff at home anymore. A lot of people do give it a shot, and total respect to them, but an awful lot of people don't. so their kids aren't learning from them or from their mistakes.
Yeah.
So we're going back a long way now to when I took pictures for a living, and I used to photograph kids for children's books for schools, and we'd typically borrow kids from a local school, and the school would get books in return for the use of their pupils. And we got real normal-looking kids instead of model kids for these books, which was, win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
And there was a kid, I can't even remember what the book was about, but I wanted to have a picture of a kid digging. So we got a couple of grow bags of compost. We put them down on the thing and we gave the kid a spade, and he didn't know what to do with it. He didn't know how to use a spade. He didn't know how to dig.
Wow.
So I said, "Wow, have you not done any?
Never been to the beach?
Have you not done any? Foolishly at the time, I was young. I said, have you not done any digging in the garden with your dad? And there was this 1, 2, haven't got a garden. I thought, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it didn't. But he didn't have a garden, didn't have a spade, didn't do digging, didn't know what to do with one.
Wow.
And he will now be old enough to be having kids of his own, comfortably. What are they learning from him? I don't know.
We're losing our way.
We're in a good place when the apocalypse happens. We're well placed to at least sort of get the basic survival established. Food and shelter. Well, shelter.
We'll be up there, and once they've built a power station, we can plug our power tools back in. We'll be like gods,
and then we can start arguing about which one's best.
Next on the list.
Well, we've done sort of working with metal, so we can scratch that. I've never really worked with metal. You?
Well, not welding.
No, I'd love to have a go.
Other than the odd little bit of cutting bits of aluminium and stuff like that, and I've done little bits of soldering and stuff, but nothing major. I can solder copper tube together for plumbing and that sort of thing quite comfortably, and get a decent looking solder joint on it as well. But I've never really worked with metal proper because I'm just not geared up for it. No, it's on my.
I've done a little bit of very very rudimentary metal bashing, but nothing. I'd love to have a proper hammer and anvil and really have a go at knocking something together. That'd be great fun.
We need to get in touch with the boys on the Fools with Tools podcast and meet up with them and
collab.
Do a bit of a collab and get them to give us an introduction to metalworking because I haven't got a clue. I wouldn't even know what piece of metal you can join onto another piece of metal.
Just rivet them together. It'll be fine.
Just domino. Battery platforms.
Battery platforms. Yeah, this was something that struck me today. I mean, how many battery platforms do you support? Just purely while I was just getting the notes together for the show, I got an email from a supplier, and apparently they've got a special on this, but the DeWalt have a 9 amp hour battery out at the moment. They have a flex volt battery, which will either run at 54 volts or 18 volts. I'm assuming it's 9 amp hours running at 18 volts. Same fitting as whatever is it XR, XLR?
Something like that. I can't remember for DeWalt, yeah.
Something like that, yeah. So you could buy this battery and it'll power your regular 18 volt tools for 9 amp hours.
How heavy is a 9 ampere hour battery?
I had no idea. It was pretty chunky looking. Or it'll run at 54 volts, or you can double them up and get a 108 volt cordless tool.
But I guess this is for going into like the site table saws and all that sort of thing, because
I would imagine so.
A few people had said that more and more.
You wouldn't want to be carrying that around.
No, that couldn't be for just hand tools But I think a lot of sites now, like building sites, are just even 110 volts not allowed. Everything has to be cordless, and cordless. I've heard of that. I don't know how true it is.
Crazy. But whilst this came out, it occurred to me: well, how many battery platforms do you actually support at the minute? I've been pretty careful with mine. I used to have all kinds of sort of oddball power tools with batteries of this and that and the other, and I tried to standardise, and I get dinged in the comments all the time. You're just a Festool fanboy. Even your drill's a Festool. I wouldn't pay for a Festool. The reason I do that is because all the batteries work with all the tools.
Yeah.
Simple as, they were the only company at the time that extended the 3-year warranty to the batteries. Lots of others do now. Oh, you should try the Milwaukee Fuel Plus, whatever. I've already bought the tools I'm going to use.
I'm going to just ditch the one
until my death, probably. I don't just ditch an entire set of stuff just as you say something else, something better has come out. So I've standardised on Festool 18 volt. I've also got a couple of oddball 15.6 volts of those, but you can use those batteries on the 18 volt tools. It's still the same fitting. They'll still work. They're not backwards compatible. You can't use the 18s and the 15s. But generally speaking, that's it. And then I started thinking about it. Well, I've got DeWalt 18 volt in my Graco. I've got Bosch 10.8. Again, I sort of standardised on 10.8 Bosch because they had a wider range of tools in the 10.8 volt. Back when everybody was honest and calling it 10.8 instead of pretending it's 12.
Yes.
I've got a couple of Ryobi 18 volt, the 1 Plus tools, because the stapler and the nailer are 1 Plus. And at the time, because of the madness of consumer electronics, it was cheaper to buy a Ryobi 1 Plus 18 volt drill driver with actually a combi with 2 batteries and a charger than it was just to buy 2 batteries and a charger. Economics, I just don't understand it. So I've got DeWalt. I've got DeWalt, I've got Ryobi, I've got Bosch 10.8, I've got Festool, and then I realised as well I've got Festool 10.8 as well, which is a different platform to all the others. So, and I up until very recently, I also had a Makita cordless drywall screw gun, but I got rid of that because I just only ever use it once in a blue moon. So yeah, too many battery platforms is how many I support. How about you?
That's quite a lot. I think I've got about 5.
Yeah.
So I've got the Makita. But then 2 of them are like just old, like an old Makita,
which isn't compatible with the current ones.
But and an old DeWalt one as well. But again, the drills are fine, so they kind of live in my workshop as workshop combi drills, ready. One with a screwdriver bit on, and one with just a pilot bit on, or a countersinking bit. Just to have them ready to grab, So there's nothing wrong with them.
That's right. I know there are quick change systems as well. The Festool makes a big deal of this, but nothing is as quick as having another drill driver with a countersink in or the screwdriver bit or whatever else.
You can never have enough drills.
No.
Never get rid of your old combi drills and drive.
How many have you got?
Oh, lordy. Including SDS, and let's have a think.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Cool.
I've got SDS, I've got a corded combi, which is quite handy if you're doing like really big holes in wood out and about. If you're drilling massive bored holes into wood, it's like way more powerful than any of my battery drills. I know battery is catching up, but it's still the power that you get from a 240 volt combi is way ahead. And then I've got Impact combi, old combi Makita, old combi DeWalt. So that's 7. There's probably a couple more that I've forgotten about.
Yeah.
But I think 7 at the minute.
Yeah, I think I've got 11, including the corded ones. I
would like more cordless combi drills. I'm vaguely debating just picking up, because there will be people who their battery platform has died and they don't have the batteries anymore, and they'll be selling the bare units for pennies on eBay.
Yeah.
Whereas I've still got the battery platform.
Yeah.
So I could probably pick the bare units up and just have them as spares knocking about the workshop. Because my old...
And then your batteries will die.
Well, I've got, for my DeWalt combi, which is NiCad, and I've got 3 perfectly good batteries for it, because before I can't remember how I even got hold of them, but I somehow got them as a brand new pack, and there's still nothing wrong with them. So if I could buy another bare NiCad DeWalt for like 20 quid or something. I'm sure I need to have a look.
Yeah.
That would be great just to have more ready to go. It's the same with routers, you can, and I don't have that many routers, but you can never have too many routers. Just to have them ready to go with different bits in.
I can say lots of little specialist routers, just a bunch of cheap ones, just with a single-use bit in, set up and ready to go, running over, chamfering. I've got one dedicated to doing lock cutouts, although I don't use that much because I've got the lock cutting thing that attaches to a drill now. But yeah, I mean, a whole, and the kind of thing that you just don't get rid of, a bit like sanders. Yeah, I've got so many sanders. I'm going to do a video about sanders actually because I have so many for all kinds of specialised little uses, and some of them just don't get used very often. I think I've only ever got rid of one sander, and I really regret it because it was really good, and there's nothing else quite like it. But I thought, no, I've got something else that duplicates that, and it doesn't quite duplicate the functionality of it. It's just yeah.
So I'm pretty much settled on Makita as my battery platform now. I was really in two minds whether to go for Makita or DeWalt, but I needed a new cordless hedge trimmer for the house, and Makita had quite a good deal on theirs, and it was like, right, that's pretty much me set on Makita now. I'm not buying yet another battery platform. Just for a hedge trimmer. Because like the Bauer one was at a really good price, but it's like I'm not sure if the Bauer batteries are going to be cross compatible with the Bauer batteries that I've already got. So I might end up with yet another Bauer, and a Bauer is decent gear. It's I thought it was quite interesting when I was doing my SDS drill video, and it led me to do a little bit of research because I've had this SDS drill for 15 years now, and it's just no sign of it packing in. I'd love to get a cordless one, but I just can't bring myself to buy a cordless one and just leave this one sitting in a box when there's literally nothing wrong with it. And it led me to do a little bit of research into what the current model is and how it compares spec-wise. And as far as I can tell, the current model, even though it has a different model name, is exactly the same drill. The insides of it is, I mean, the specs are identical. The body, the casing looks identical. The only thing that's slightly different is the grab handle. It looks like they've rubberized the grab handle on it, which, to be honest, is probably
just to pick up loads of dirt and dust for you.
Yeah, I think it's a step down because the grab handle just wears out so much. It's just a solid plastic grab handle on mine, and it's been fine. But I thought it was quite interesting that over 15 years the design just hasn't changed.
Yeah. Well, if you get it right and it works and it is long lasting, then why change it?
Yes, exactly.
Other than nonsense like rubberized handles, soft grips that just wear out.
They just wear away. Cool. So that's battery platforms done. What else have we got?
Budget tools versus premium. How do you choose?
Oh, that's a big topic in itself.
We can make it small. Buy what you can buy the best you can afford. There you go.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll buy a cheap tool just because I know it's a cheap tool and budget tool, just because it performs the function that I need, and maybe it lasts and maybe it doesn't. If I'm buying something short term for a specific job, I usually buy a premium tool because I know it'll keep its value. I know I'll be able to move it on again after the job is done or at a later stage. But budget tools, they're not disposable, but you should know what to expect with a budget tool. There's a bit more of this in some of my excellent comments to my Parkside video. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in the after show. But common sense expectations with a budget tool versus a premium. People tend to be a little bit more critical of premium tools because you're paying more for them, which is not unreasonable. Whereas I think a lot of budget tools, I mentioned in one of my videos that they still need to be fit for purpose. They've still got to perform the job that you expect of them. But at the same time, I think a lot of people give them a little bit of leeway rather than simply returning them if they don't quite perform right, because it's, even though the sort of companies you buy these things from have very good returns policies, it's sometimes just easier if it is functioning reasonably well and there's just some silly little niggle that's wrong with it. Well, just fix that. Actually, somebody in my comments popped in to say, well, if a tool's not right, of course you should return it. That was a woman speaking. I think a lot of blokes would look at that and think, oh, there's something I can fix. I can fettle that. If that little rubber splinter guard isn't quite reaching across, I can just peel that off and stick it back on. Or if the handle is loose, I can tighten it or whatever else. Whereas I think some people will say, well, that's wrong. You need to put that right. So yeah. That's my thinking on it. Buy a budget tool by all means, but be realistic about what you're expecting it to do and what you're getting for it.
It's setting your expectations appropriately. If you buy a budget tool and it dies a day after the warranty's ended, then don't be surprised. And then sometimes you hit on gems that just last forever. I mean, my main 6-inch random orbit sander, Erbauer, and it's just lasted and it's done the job. I only bought it as I don't know what, it's probably more of a low mid-range tool. I would say it's not quite your budget level tools. It's kind of your lower of the mid-range tools. But it's was always bought as under the understanding that I would be replacing it relatively soon. I didn't expect it to last as long as it has lasted, and it's just kept going and kept going. So I think you do occasionally hit on those gems of tools that, for the money, they're absolute bargains, but you can't be surprised if they do pack in, because they're just not the same quality-wise generally.
Yeah. Well, my SDS is a 29 quid B&Q Special Performance Power. It was so good, I went back and bought another one just to have as a spare, and true enough, I was doing a lot more sort of buildery type bathroom and kitchen refits back then. So they got a lot of hammer, digging through brick and blatting 4-inch cores through brickwork to get extractor pipes through and all the rest of it. And true enough, when the first one died, and it did after a few years, I had a spare one, and that one's still going strong. Doesn't get used much these days. I think I used it last year before. I had to put a core through for an extractor. But yeah, it was fine. But it's you get tremendous value as long as your expectations are realistic from them.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Next, should we have a short ad break for ourselves?
Okay, that's a good plan.
Can we just promote Patreon a little bit?
Yeah.
Because we are 100% reliant on your support on Patreon to keep this show going. And although we've got really good following on Patreon, if you do want to see a season 4, it would be fantastic to have you on board on Patreon as a show supporter, because you can see on Patreon how much we make from this, and it really is pennies per hour that we make once you add up all the editing time and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do it because we enjoy it. It's important to realise that as well. And but we think other people enjoy it too. But this is without question a time sink. We're giving up a morning to record this, which means a day a week. Andy has given up at least another morning, if not more, to edit this down into something sort of vaguely manageable. And to do a season 4, especially if we are vaguely thinking about doing a weekly show, that's going to be a big blow to our time. And of course, there is only so much time we can afford to put into this for free, and we would love to have some more patron support. If you can see your way, if you enjoy the show, if you find it interesting and useful and valuable, then consider giving us a little bit of support on Patreon. As Andy says, this is the only way in which we're currently getting any income from the podcast, and we'd love you to join us in the after show. We do an after show of varying lengths, where we get a little bit looser, don't we, Andy? We talk a little bit more about the YouTube side of things. We're not behaving ourselves quite as well as we do on the main show. It's less for public consumption, and we're
not beholden to the rules of Apple and podcasting and all that sort of thing, and keeping the podcast clean and things like that. And not that we're particularly,
not that we're profane or anything, but we can be a little bit looser. With it, it's kind of over the shoulder a little bit more rather than from across the room. So yes, we would love you to join us in the after show. So support the podcast through patreon.com/measuring up podcast, and we'd love to see you there.
That would be awesome. And if we get sufficient support on Patreon, there will certainly be a season 4.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back on topic, making doors before the carcasses. That's an interesting one that you've got on the list there.
Yeah, I've got to do that now. The job, I'm going to on holiday in a few weeks, and I've got a job to do as soon as I come back, because the family that I'm doing the for will be away that time, but somebody is coming to stay in the room that I'm working in, the week after I'm installing these things. So, absolute definite time frame. They are sending the doors out to be sprayed. I'm not doing those, which is fine. But it does mean that I've got to build the doors before I've built the carcass, which means everything has to be a bit more precise. There is always, I usually have the carcasses made and you can dry fit them or whatever else, and you do the doors so that they fit. And I always like to try and at least offer them up to make sure that they're right before they're painted, before they're fitted, before they're installed. This time,
what size doors do you make versus the carcass size? What do you allow for gaps and things?
Well, this is the part of the hotly debated sort of process, because I haven't done a run. These are 3 double wardrobes. So quite a long run, and obviously the gap between the doors, you've got, stating the obvious here probably for everybody, but you've got 2 doors on a carcass, let's call it double wardrobe, you've got 2 doors on, you've got to have a gap between the doors, and you've got to have a gap at either end of the doors, but especially between the 2 carcasses, where the right door of the left-hand carcass abuts the left door of the right-hand carcass. You've got to have a join there so that the doors don't bind, so that they don't snag. And I usually allow a couple of mil between the doors. So I make the overall opening size of the doors 6 mil narrower than the carcass side.
The door.
Yeah. So if you got 1,000 mil carcass, the total size of the doors is 995. That gives you...
Yeah, but...
a couple of mil between the doors and 1.5 mil at either side of the doors.
Hold on. So you made it 995, so 2 mil in the middle. And right, okay, yeah. Because I would... Well, if it's butting up to another carcass that has doors, then you would have to divide your outer ones by 2, because you're going to have this. So if you want a 2 mil gap between every door, then you would have a 2 mil gap in the middle, a 1 mil gap on the right, and a 1 mil gap on the left. And then when that butts up to your next one, that would have a 1 mil, and that would give you a 2 mil total. Which, yeah, that's the same as how I do it.
But it's one of these simple maths things which is surprisingly complicated, and of course, even more so when the doors have gone off to be sprayed, and even more so with these because they're having cut-out handles in them which have to match. You can't mess around with those. They've got to go in straight and level and true.
And then do you do the tops and bottoms to the height of the carcass and then trim around it, or do you allow the gap on the door side, if that makes sense? Do you make so if it was
it depends what's going above. If you've got a top box above it, then yes, I'll typically the wardrobe is up on a plinth,
yeah,
so I can just drop the door down by a couple of mil.
No, it's horrible having to make doors when you haven't made the carcasses yet.
Yes, it is, and I've got to do that this coming week, assuming I get my workshop back from being a spray booth, and it's going to be difficult. I've also got some sliding doors to do for this family as well, which are interesting. In fact, I've got some sliding door track coming today just to try it out, because what they want, if you imagine eaves, so big house, loft conversion, eaves storage. So you've got a flat wall, and behind that the ceiling slopes down. Yeah, in the slope of the roof. Before, they've had 2 double doors on the outside of the eave storage. They want to take those off. They've taken those off and had the frames made good. They want a single sliding door on the inside. But if you imagine 2 1,200 wide openings with about a couple of meters between them, they want the doors to slide across into the centre space. So you can't have both of them open at the same time, which is one of those things. Okay. But you need a single track that covers that whole span. So almost 5 meters.
That'll be fun.
So that's going to be entertaining, yeah. So 2 of those and another one. And again, I've got to try and make the doors for those beforehand so they can go off to be sprayed at the same time. Plus, I've got to do for the wardrobes, I've got to do infills, plinth covers, and there's a big infill up to the ceiling as well, which is going to have to be scribed around plaster cornice.
Oh, joy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to this.
They keep you on your toes.
Oh, man.
While trying to not damage the plaster cornice, which is probably 150 years old. And
yes. And the wardrobes are being built into an alcove. Yeah, so it's going to be 850 deep, the carcass, and then in the alcove section will be shelved.
Oh, okay, right, I see what you mean, yeah.
So you have hanging space in the wardrobe in front, and you just, through like Narnia, through that to get to the shelves.
That sounds big.
It's a big old lump, it is, with the top box above it as well, going all the way back.
Wow.
So yeah, big, and then obviously the centre one isn't as wide because it's up against the chimney breast. But the one at the other end goes into an alcove which is only 400 wide, so an awkward shape at the end one. So interesting, Yeah, just when I thought I was finished with doing installs, I've got these to do. It's for the money, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you. But yes, it's challenging making doors before you do the carcass, because it's got to be right. We use concealed hinges, which are wonderful, and I've got a video coming out about concealed hinges. But the adjustment in them is to make up for things being pulled out of shape slightly, or for wonky walls or whatever else. It's not to make our lives easier to be able to shuffle these doors around because I've made them the wrong size.
Yeah.
You've got to get it right.
Oh, absolutely. And this comes back to a whole separate topic on how accurate do you need to be? And the answer is very accurate when you're dealing with an exactly 2 millimetre gap between each door and all that sort of thing.
These doors are going to go off and be sprayed, and I don't know how much the spray is going to take off by sanding. That's where the adjustment on the hinges comes in very useful. Yeah.
Cool. Right. What else is on our list of things?
Is on our list. Next man in. Do you care?
Nah.
When you're doing stuff and you know that at some point in the future some poor sap is going to be in and will have to do something in or around the job that you're doing, do you consider making their life easier or not? I generally do, because many times in my handyman days, I was that poor sap who was coming in to try and put something right, and some other clown beforehand had put screws where nobody would ever imagine screws to be, or used screws instead of nails, or whatever it was. There was something somewhere which would absolutely confound you until you realise what it was, and then you could dig out the screw or whatever and figure out how to get in to gain access to whatever you're trying to put right or trying to fit. So I do bear it in mind, but I don't let it get in the way of the job that I'm doing.
Yes, I think it's just having an element of common sense to it. And it again, it comes to one of these things. Do you caulk after you finished a job? Or do you leave that for the decorators? Yeah, I always caulk.
I'll generally caulk. Depends what it is. Sometimes, depending on the job, it is a mark of, top quality, I've discovered, not to caulk things. You just scribe things really carefully to the wall and leave them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. It's a thing, apparently. For most of the sort of work that I do, I'll caulk, because I see that as part of the finishing. That's part of my job to do that.
I would absolutely, but it's one of these mixed opinion thing where I've had people commenting on my videos where I've caulked stuff in once it's all done, and people have said, you're being very generous there for the decorators and doing their job for them, and it's like, I don't really view that as being their job, because apart from anything else, the caulk generally needs overnight to dry, and it's going to slow down the next. Whereas if I can just put the caulk on, and then it's going to be probably a few days before the decorator comes, it means everything's ready to rock. Whereas if the decorator's having to caulk stuff before they can even start painting, then it just seems a bit of a backwards way of doing things. But I know there's certain people who are absolutely, no, that's not the job of the joiner or cabinet maker.
Well, some people think painting is not the job of the cabinet maker or joiner either. But.
Well, that's another thing. And as we've briefly mentioned, I've had jobs where I've pre-primed and treated all the edges of the MDF because I don't trust what sort of job the decorator's going to do until I know that the decorator knows how to deal with MDF. Because I've had decorators come back and say, "Oh no, we can't." They've literally just refused to paint it because they don't know how to deal with it. Or they've said, "Oh, you'll have to get a specialist company in to do that." And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Aren't you the specialist company? Isn't that your job? But,
that's what you do.
Yeah. So I've had some where I've done all of the pre-priming and sanding of the edges of the MDF, even when I'm not doing the painting. And as I say, generally I'll do the caulking. I think leaving stuff uncorked, maybe for solid oak and solid wood, I can understand that. But if it's being painted, I don't see the harm in popping some cork in just to, apart from anything else, it just allows for any contraction of the wood. If it's wood that's been sitting in my workshop for a long time, it's going to have a much higher moisture content than once it goes out onto a customer site and dries out in a centrally heated room. You are going to get some contraction. So I think it's probably a good idea to have some cork.
So you still haven't got a centrally heated garage then, Andy?
No. Oh, I forgot you've got a centrally heated workshop.
Centrally heated?
Damn you.
Kiln dried in there.
Kiln dried. Oh, man. My workshop, the humidity levels over the last couple of weeks because of all the rain, humidity levels in my garage have been going through the roof. I've just had to keep an eye that nothing's starting to rust and things because, interesting.
Yeah, new tools and toys, but no time to play. That's very prescient for me. I had a message on my Instagram. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at Measuring Up Podcast on Instagram. Andy, you're at Gosforth Handyman on Instagram. I am at 10 Minute Workshop on Instagram. Had a message on Instagram about my lamello little video. Or what's the minimum depth of material you can use the lamello Clamex joints on with a mitre? I said, I'm sorry, but I've no idea. I mean, other than putting a couple of joints together for this video, I haven't touched it. I've been doing some other things for the last couple of weeks. So, unfortunately, as much fun as it is to get new stuff, we don't get to play with it until there's a job that we can use it on, or until we've got time to actually have a proper play. Hopefully when I get my workshop back, and whilst my doors are being cut to size by the yard, before I start chewing up handle cutouts in them and that sort of thing. Hopefully I'll have a quick play with my lamello and my domino and have a quick comparison. But since over the last couple of weeks I haven't touched it. It's been just gathering dust and paint spray on, on my bench of shame, along with everything else.
It must be killing you, though, not to start getting into using it now that you know you've got it there. But
yeah, it's slightly irritating. No, it's not killing me. It's just, it's a tool, and I'll look forward to using it on the next project. The next big project that I'll have for it will be these wardrobes. They're all Sapele veneer. So hopefully I'll get those. I'll get all that cut and ready to go for when I come back from holiday, which is late July. And then that'll give me a week to get the bits assembled, get everything put together, and the shelf pin holes, drill, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've got it. I'll get to use it eventually. But yes, it's slightly annoying that I couldn't use it on these little tables. The little tables are all dominoed together because the section of the leg is way too narrow.
New toys and tools. What have I got new? I think probably the main thing top of my list is to just get this dust collection thing sorted out, but I still haven't had time. It's just videos. YouTube's just taking over, completely taking over. Literally all I've done this week is edit. But just crazy amount of time I've had this dust collection system just sitting there.
Well, talking of which, we had many great comments in from the show email, and if you do want to send us a message either for inclusion in the show or perhaps where the answer you'd like is a little more private, then you can contact us at contact@measuringuppodcast.com. In fact, if you go to measuringuppodcast.com and hit the contact button, you'll find a web form where you can send us an email through there. We've got a couple of great questions through there. James wrote in to say he really appreciates the chats that we have every couple of weeks. Very fun and informative and entertaining. Thank you very much. A question: what tools could you not do without, and what tools do you not yet own but would like? That's an interesting one. I could not do without my track saw. I think a track saw for me is the most enabling tool I've had, especially in a small workshop, because a table saw just isn't that useful for me in a small space. And the tool that I do not yet own but would like, up until a couple of weeks ago, I would have said that would be a Lamello Zeta P2, but now I own one. So I don't know. I'll have to think about that. How about you?
It's a tricky one. I would tend to say the track saw, but then there's other tools. I mean, even as simple as a jigsaw would be very difficult to do a lot of the jobs. Scribing and stuff like that would be almost impossible without a jigsaw.
All right. I think my jigsaw is probably my least used tool.
How do you scribe shelves and stuff?
I usually get them close to the track saw and then sand them or plane them.
Right. And some of the alcoves I've worked in where the almost curved alcoves, I just couldn't survive without the jigsaw on some of those scribing. All scribes and cut-ins and just coping in general and stuff, all jigsaw.
Almost everything I do has a back to it, so I avoid all of that sort of scribing, to be honest.
I do a lot of floating shelves. For some reason I seem to do a lot.
Yeah, I haven't done a floating shelf for a long time.
I seem to do a lot of those, and they need a lot of scribing. But then you think combi, just even combi drill. Could you survive without it? Probably not. You're going to need it for so many parts of a job.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tricky one. Track saw would definitely be up there.
Yeah, difficult. Great question. Very tricky.
What tools do you not yet own but you would like to own? There's not many on my side.
No,
to be honest.
me neither.
I've got pretty much everything I need.
I'd say CNC, but I'm getting there. Just again, CNC goes back to the thing. That project has been sidelined just really because the work's just taken over, and the CNC is in a corner, all covered in plastic, so it doesn't get sprayed. And I'll get to it, but it's going to be after my holidays probably. A tool that I don't yet own but would like. There's not much.
There's tools that I would like to have, but I would have to fundamentally change my workshop to own them.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'd love I don't have a planer thicknesser. For example.
Well, I've got one, and they are very, very handy.
I want to do a little bit more later on in the year. I want to make some thicker section tables, not out of MDF. So there may well be one on in my future, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I don't know where I'm going to put it. I think there may be a complete workshop change around actually due just to rebench everything, because it's been. I just threw the workshop together. Getting on for 20 years ago, and it's done incredibly well, but it really needs some work. The benches need to be changed, the tops need to be changed.
I thought you were retiring.
I might just pull everything out. I might do that. Well, this may be a retirement project.
Right. So if you retired, do you think you would keep the workshop anyway? Or
I don't know. I can't imagine not having it. But of course, it is an expense. It's not my garage. I do pay for it. It is astonishingly good value for a workshop space in London, but the rents are going up all the time, and it is an expense. No question. Fortunately, my wonderful Patreon supporters and the money I get from YouTube do cover the costs of the workshop space. But not much more than that. So, this is, again, something else to discuss a little bit in the after show. But, yes, retirement is beckoning. I'm not capable of doing many more of these big installs because they're just too much. They're too much effort. They're too much oiking stuff around. And I've got to think of something else to fill that gap, fill that void. Both in terms of time and money. I was hoping being a radio presenter might have done it, but no.
Take that one off the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we got another really good bit of feedback about from Adam about dust, and he's mentioned that he's progressing from a rank novice to something approaching novice, and that he really enjoys the show.
We're all there, yeah.
Yeah, and he needs some form of dust extraction in his tiny shed. And in the light of that, he bought a Titan vacuum, and it seems to be great, but very loud. And the only issue is that none of his power tools seem to connect up to it. And how do you sort out cobbling together connections to dust networks and all that?
Yeah.
And tell me about it.
Yeah, how do you do that, Andy? Well, it's important to say, Adam says he's bought a Titan vacuum. I'm assuming it's just a regular type vacuum rather than a dust and chip collector. So it'll be like a regular sized hose. And again, we don't really know what machinery Adam has, because using that kind of vacuum and attaching that to, say, a table saw or something that makes a lot of chips or dust isn't going to give you fantastic extraction. It's got to be said. It's a relatively small thing and will fill fairly quickly. Especially
if it's going in a bag. I don't know whether this is a bagged vacuum or whether it goes into a kind of bin thing. The type that goes into a kind of bin thing are infinitely better for large quantities of dust.
Yes.
But yes. In terms of the connections, you do just need to cobble stuff together. There is no standard. And
I suppose the closest we've got to a standard is the sort of 32mm connector, isn't it? But that varies from tool to tool and from manufacturer to manufacturer.
Yeah.
And I've noticed an awful lot of small sanders are coming with some oddball rectangular connection to them, which is infuriating, because just a straight round rubber connector softish plastic connector is so much better. So much more universal.
My Bauer, which is so old now, there's no way I would be able to get the adapter for it to connect it to any form of dust extraction. But the connection, it's some weird, almost, it's like, imagine a rectangle that's had the edges chamfered. It's almost kind of...
There's probably a word for it,
almost
but
like
yeah,
a long hexagon shape. And it's like, it's the most bespoke dust connector that I've ever seen on a tool, and I might as well just give up all hope of
ridiculous.
ever connecting that to dust collection. Yeah, you do just have to cobble stuff together. I liked your tip on one of your videos of using some bicycle inner tube. I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, it was for one of the many Aldi vacuum videos that I did. We'll pop a link in the show notes, perhaps, to this particular one, because I used some old bicycle tire inner tube and sort of put it around the outside of the hose end, and then folded that in, and that was enough. That gave you enough distance. It gave it a little bit of extra grip, but just packed it out a little bit enough to make the connection decent. So that worked extremely well. It's one of those awkward ones where it wasn't quite enough to get a secondary adapter onto it, and I don't like those. You can get sort of stepped adapters relatively cheaply. Maybe we'll put a link in the show notes to those as well. But the problem with those is they make the end of the tool that much longer. You know, the start of the hose on the tool has a little, 4-inch plastic bit on it anyway, 100mm, and then you've got the stepped adapter, and then you've got the end that attaches to the tool. You can end up with 200mm of adapters between the hose and the actual tool, and that gets a bit unwieldy and is prone to coming off, and if you're trying to have dust collection on a tool, the last thing you want, of course, is for it to come off while you're using the tool and start spraying dust everywhere when you're trying to collect it. The rubber inner tube idea worked really well, actually, and if you can get that to work for you, then good plan.
And other than that, it's just a question of your big tool stores generally do sell dust collection adapters and things, or just get yourself on eBay or Amazon or whatever and just search for dust collection adapters. You should be able to find that. I find the flexible type work quite well, and they're a bit more forgiving in terms of like you get the ones that have for want of a better word, but like a conical shape to them, and you can even cut them at a specific point, and that makes it the correct size for whatever you're doing, and they work quite well. But yeah, there is no standard as such, and you just have to work stuff out. As I am well aware on my plans for my own dust collection, which is one of the many reasons that I haven't done it, but the main reason is just complete lack of time. Yeah,
tell me about it. One of the things I particularly like for dust collection adaptation and things, for the end that goes onto the tool, and again, call me a fanboy if you like, but Festool hose ends are rubber, so they squish around the tool end really well, and you can get those and adapt them down to whatever other size hose you're using. It is a relatively expensive option. They're about 12 or 15 quid each, but they do work extremely well. And we'll again in the video that I linked to about using a rubber inner tube. There's a bit in that video as well about using the Festool hose and adapting those down. So that is always an option, but it is the expensive option. The other thing is, of course, is you've got to adapt the vacuum to a variety of tools. It sounds a little bit like overkill, but sometimes a bit like drills and drivers, it's good to have more than one vacuum if you've got space for it. So you might have one attached to your miter saw or your bandsaw or whatever else, and you have a second one that does the other hand tools, maybe. Different size hoses, different size hoses on different tools, of course.
Which is something that I've been considering doing, because when I put my dust collection network in, I definitely want a permanent connection to my table saw. I want an easy connection to my router table, and I want a drop connection in the middle of the shop that I can connect up to anything, basically, whether it's a track saw or sander or whatever. But then over on the other side of my workshop, I've got my chop saw, my miter saw, and I don't particularly want to run the tubing all the way around the shop. Apart from anything else, I would have to completely change how I've got everything laid out on the walls of my shop. But it might just be easier to run a separate extractor for that, and because that generates generally very fine dust, and it doesn't need a great big beefy
orange hose
dust extractor. It doesn't need the same level of extraction that the table saw needs, for example, or the planer. The mitre saw, at the minute it's just got a bag on it, and it fills up its own little bag every couple of weeks, and it's generally fine. But it does generate quite a lot of dust, so I can quite understand why people end up building housings around them and stuff. All of them, we've talked about a lot in today's show. There will be links to everything we've talked about in the show.
Andy,
notes.
we haven't got through the list yet. There's still more.
We've done pretty well. We've got through. Hold on. We've done pretty well. We've got through a good.
We've done pretty well. Let's just remind ourselves. Quote from Winston Churchill: "Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm." So, I think we've done all right.
Exactly. So on that note, we've got a few thank yous, and thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. As I say, if you could get onto Patreon and, you can pledge anything from $1, and just, it helps us keep the show going. We can't keep the show going without your support on Patreon. It's as simple as that. And a massive thank you to Andrew Marnell, James Ian Wilson, Eddie Carroll, Darren McEverly, Jason Hook, Phil Wilson, Piece of Timber, James Hewitt, Paul Gardner, and Keith Turner on my side.
And I would like to thank Kevin Steer, Chris Dryan, Wayne Gilbert, Thistledew, Nick Makes, Douglas Deal, John T. Lynch, James's Man Cave, Randall Davis, and Duncan. Thank you very much indeed.
And of course, music is Silver by Riot. And it's been fantastic to have you all on board for Season 3. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to give a bit of feedback on iTunes if you can. That's always appreciated.
Absolutely.
You can chat with us over on Twitter in the meantime, Measuring Up PC on Twitter and at Measuring Up Podcast on Instagram, or you can get in touch with the show via the contact form on measuringuppodcast.com. How do we find you, Peter?
I am at 10 Minute Shop on Twitter. I am at 10 Minute Workshop on Instagram, and I am 10 Minute Workshop on YouTube.
Fantastic stuff. We shall see you all who are supporting us on Patreon. We shall join you in the after show, and we have quite a few interesting things to chat about on there.
We do. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a slightly longer after show than normal on this one, because there's a bit to discuss.
In the meantime, keep your eyes peeled on Twitter and Instagram for date for the start of Season 4.
We'll announce on all the usual social things, but we will see you in the next season. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.